During the bot crisis, you could, to some extent, modify the bot movements. You probably think that it's not possible, but in theory it is due to one thing which is called the Navmesh. And in today's video I want to explain to you what is a Navmesh, how you have to use it, why it was also perfect for TF2 and like for automated bots, both for Valve and for cheater bots, and why also the engineer sentries could sometimes steer the bot pathfinding simply by changing the cost of moving to certain areas. Well, first of all, I think I should explain what is a navmesh. So, navmesh is a short term for a navigation mesh, which is a pathfinding data structure used by AI. Instead of telling the boss walk through the map like a human or go there, the game just gives it a simplified model of walkable space. Usually it's a polygon, and it's a set of connected areas that represent where an agent can move or not. In source games, that navmesh data is stored in a .nav files that correspond to the map. It's basically the map's AI skeleton if you want. And in TF2, that navmesh is not theoretical at all. The game relies on it for multiple AI systems. And just to mention a few of them, you will have it for the training and practice bots, for the MV robots, which is for example the reason why you see when you see an engineer like bugging a sentry or making it detonate, is because the sentry buster is not able to find the way towards a sentry, and because the robot navmesh is bugged, it just detonates and ceases to exist. And another navmesh is also the Halloween boss. If navmesh was just a series of polygons and that was it would be a bit boring. So to understand how a bot choose the route and like use a navmesh overall, you have to imagine that key concept. Bots don't just pick the shortest path, they pick the lowest cost path. For example, if you have one short path but dangerous and one longer path but safe, the bot will probably take the longer path. So a navmesh isn't only a where you can walk area, it's also a support, and it have properties and costs that influence decisions, which routes are preferred, which are avoided, and which are expensive to cross. If you go into Valve documentations, you can see that they provide maps and mapping tools that directly manipulate that logic. They have some command, for example, to decrease the pathfinding cost of an area, making bots more likely to route through it. Or they also have another command that increase the pathfinding cost, so you basically artificially make bots avoid certain area by raising the cost to move through it. So in the end, the mental model of that is quite simple. Bots will walk through the map like a GPS. If one road becomes expensive, they reroute. It's as if you were into traffic. If you want to avoid a traffic jam, then you would just take another route to go to your destinations. Bots will do exactly the same. Now let's connect that to engineer. During the bot era, some players, me included, noticed that some bots would avoid certain choke points when a sentry controls them. Sometimes they would stall, sometimes they would funnel into a worse route, sometimes they would do that weird hesitate, commit and die loop. The interesting part is this line up with how TF2 own bot logic treats sentries. In some TF2 bot updates notes, you can see that the AI explicitly treats sentry guns as a threat, to the point where Valve mentioned behaviors like bots hiding from sentry guns or even turning what bots consider dangerous threat around sentries. So conceptually what's happening is as follows. The bots want to reach a goal, Doesn't matter if it's an objective, a target, or position. It will evaluate the possible paths across enough areas. The areas that expose to high danger, like stepping into a sentry control sightline, become expensive. If the cost is high enough, it chooses a different route. It's basically the same functions as what Valve used to raise the cost or reshape routing. And you have to understand that it's not a magical hard counter. Some bots will still push through if there is no alternative, or if the script is aggressive. But the reason sentries could sometimes steer the bot flow is because the bot pathfinding is not just geometry, but it's some geometry plus a layer of risk mass on top of it. Now you understand that Navmesh basically is used to guide the bots from point A to point B or to the objective. So in that case, you also probably understand why Navmesh mattered during the bot crisis. Basically, it was solving the hardest part of automations, moving into a complex 3D map. And if you're writing some automations, whether it's a training bot, an MVM robot, or a malicious cheater bot, you need some reliable answers to the questions like, what part of this map are workable? How do I get from spawn to mid without getting stuck? And what is the safest or the cheapest route to the next point? And a Navmesh already encodes those answers. That's why, for example, the next bot system used across the source engine and used in TF2 leans so heavily on Navmeshes. It's the simplest way to give an AI map awareness that isn't just some random wandering. It also explains why bot movement often look repetitive, because once you have a cost-based system, it tends to converge on the same best routes until something changes the cost, like, a sentry. Now, to be clear, so not every bot you saw in Casual was a Valve training bots. A lot of the bots during the bot crisis were encountering cheat software like aimbot, automation, spam, and they weren't necessarily using the exact same AI package as the TF bots. But the Navmesh logic is still relevant because it's more like a general tool, and its goal is to automate movement, and Navmesh is basically the cleanest shortcut to make that movement look purposeful. So even if two bots had different brains, or AI, the Navmesh could still be the same skeleton underneath. Okay, so I do want to still make a special mention for the source code leak that happened during 2020, because you had some source code for CSGO and TF2 who was leaked publicly, and Valve said they reviewed it and didn't find any reason for players to avoid current builds. Basically, they were telling people just to not panic. So let's analyze this a bit. The leak was around a circa 2011 build embedded in the CSGO leak for TF2. So did this create the bot crisis? No, not really. Not automatically, at least. But there is a realistic impact from it. Leaks reduce the frictions between bots and the automation and the game. Even Valve on developers community documentations was including some guides that explicitly said that a source code leak allowed the next bot system to be implemented by hand for source modes, meaning that the leak could make advanced AI navigation system more accessible to people outside Valve. So a careful and honest way to phrase that would be that the leak didn't invent botting. It existed way before that. Like, you have botnet who existed way before that. But it could have accelerated the understanding and therefore making it easier to study how systems like Nextbot, navigations, or any behavioral logic work under the hood, which could benefit both legitimate models but also malicious developers. In the end, if you have to remember one thing from this video, try to make it this, I guess. Bots didn't move intelligently because they were smart. They moved intelligently because TF2 maps already contain a navigational blueprint, the Navmesh. And you could alter that Navmesh by using sentries or create some false values for the bots and basically make their paths more predictable to better fight them. You could basically, as a human, create a cost modifier, and it will change what the bots will think was worth it or not. That's why during the bot crisis, you could sometimes watch entire lobbies who were getting controlled not by aim, but by the invisible navigation marks underneath the map. And while you could see people and teams of engineers putting sentries in front of bot spawns to prevent them from leaving that spawn. Anyway, it was Malatos. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it teach you a bit, and if I made any false or like bad explanation at least in the video, feel free to correct me, because at the end of the day I am not a programmer. I'm just, a small nerd who checks that. Alright, it was Malatos, and I'll see you in the next one.